Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on completion of the Inception Phase of PPEPP project. Many of you may know that PKSF is now implementing an extreme poverty program called Pathways to Prosperity for Extremely Poor People, shortly called Prosperity, with joint funding from UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office and European Union. The multidimensional program is working for the sustainable alleviation of extreme poverty of 1 million people living in three climate vulnerable regions of Bangladesh. The 6-year program covers 222 unions of 43 upazilas in 15 poverty-prone districts along the Tista and Brahmaputra river basin in northwest, Haur areas in northeast, and the southwestern coastal belt. Before the full-scale rollout in April this year, PKSF undertook a one-year inception phase, including a piloting in randomly selected 17 unions to test and finalize the targeting and household selection process as well as intervention and service delivery modalities. To share the learnings from the inception phase with you all, PKSF is organizing this webinar. Dear audience, we welcome you heartily. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. Welcome once again to the webinar of completion of the inception phase of PPEPP project. Many of you may already know that PKSF is now implementing an extreme poverty program called Pathways to Prosperity for Extremely Poor People, PPEPP, shortly called Prosperity, with joint funding from UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and European Union. The multidimensional program is working for the sustainable alleviation of extreme poverty of 1 million people living in three climate vulnerable regions of Bangladesh. The 6-year program covers 222 unions of 43 upazila in 15 poverty-prone districts along the Tista and Brahmaputra river basin in northwest, Haur areas in northeast, and the southwestern coastal belt. Before the full-scale rollout in April this year, PKSF undertook a one-year inception phase, including a piloting in randomly selected 17 unions to test and finalize the targeting and household selection process, as well as interventions and service delivery modalities. To share the learnings from the inception phase with you all, PKSF is organizing this webinar. Dear audience, of the program. Whereas Mr. Muhammad Moinuddin Abdullah, Managing Director PKSF, will provide the welcome speech. We are very glad to let you know that Mr. Abdul Rauf Talukdar, Senior Secretary, Finance Division, Ministry of Finance, will grace this occasion as the chief guest. It is also mentionable that Mr. Arijit Chaudhuri, Additional Secretary, Financial Institutions Division, Ministry of Finance, will grace this occasion as the special guest. Ms. Judith Herbertson, Development Director, FCDO, and Mr. Marius Jain, Head of Cooperation, Delegation of European Union to Bangladesh, are joining us today. In order to sharing the lessons learned during the inception year, there will be a presentation delivered by Dr. A.K.M. Nuruzzaman, General Manager PKSF, and Dr. Sharif Ahmed Chaudhuri, General Manager PKSF. I may inform you all that both of them played a very important role into significant projects of PKSF, Jibito, and Prime respectively, which are related to the ultra poor. Dr. A.K.M. Nuruzzaman had been the project coordinator of Ujjibita project of PKSF, and Dr. Sharif Ahmed Chaudhuri had been the project coordinator of Prime project. Prosperity project is a follow-up project of these two projects. We are glad to let you know that Dr. Sharif Ahmed Chaudhuri and Dr. A.K.M. Nuruzzaman have very vital role in this project as the advisors. Dear participants, we gladly announce that Professor M. A. Sattar Mondol, PhD, and Professor M. A. Baki Khalili, PhD, will also join us as the honorable panelists. We also cordially welcome today's other participants that include top government officials from the Ministry of Finance and other relevant ministries and departments, deputy commissioners and Upajila Nirbahi officers from the prosperity working areas, representatives from FCDO, EU, and other development organizations, academicians, extreme poverty experts, and executive officers of the implementing partner organizations.
আমার নাম নিরঞ্জন বর্মন, টেকনিক্যাল অফিসার নিউট্রিশন। আমি কাজ করি প্যাথওয়ে টু প্রসপারিটি ফর এক্সট্রিমলি পোর পিপল প্রকল্পে। আমাদের এই গ্রামের নাম উত্তর ষাট গোপালপুর। আর আমরা আজকে যে পাড়াটাতে আসছি এই পাড়াটার নাম হলো গুচ্ছগ্রাম। আমরা এই এলাকার যে সমস্ত অতি দরিদ্র পরিবারগুলো আছে আমরা সে পরিবার দিয়ে নিয়ে কাজ করব। এই অতি দরিদ্র পরিবারগুলো চিহ্নিত করার জন্য এলাকার যে সামাজিক মানচিত্র আছে, এলাকার যে মানুষের জীবিকা নির্বাহ হয় বা তারা যে কাজগুলো করে জীবিকা নির্বাহ করে এবং তাদের যে এখানকার কাজের যে বিভিন্ন রকমের প্রকৃতি, সেই বিষয়গুলো আমরা এখানে আলোচনা করে সম্পদের যে পরিমাণ আছে বা সম্পদের যে শ্রেণীবিন্যাস আছে আমরা এগুলো এখানে আলোচনার মাধ্যমে এলাকার যে অতি দরিদ্র পরিবারগুলো আছে আমরা সেগুলো চিহ্নিত করব আজকে। ওই এলাকার যারা বাসিন্দা আমরা তাদের মাধ্যমেই এলাকার যে সম্পদের শ্রেণীবিন্যাস আছে আমরা সেটা করব এবং আমাদের এই এফজিডির মাধ্যমে অতি দরিদ্র পরিবারদের চিহ্নিত করার জন্য আমাদের কিছু প্রক্সি ইন্ডিকেটর আছে, যেমন বসতবাড়ির ধরন, তারপরে পেশা, সে কোন পেশায় হলো জীবিকা নির্বাহ করে, উপার্জনকারীর সংখ্যা, এই সমস্ত বিষয়গুলো আমাদের প্রক্সি ইন্ডিকেটরের মাধ্যমে আমরা অতি দরিদ্র পরিবারগুলো আমরা চিহ্নিত করব। এখানে আজকে আমাদের এই এফজিডিতে যে স্থানীয় জনগণ আছে এর মধ্যে কৃষক রয়েছে, শিক্ষক রয়েছে, ব্যবসায়ী আছে, দোকানদার আছে, শিক্ষক, ইমাম। আমরা তাদের মাধ্যমেই এই এলাকার জনগণের যে অতি দরিদ্র যে জনগোষ্ঠী আছে আমরা তাদেরকে চিহ্নিত করে আমরা বের করে নিয়ে আসব। গুচ্ছগ্রাম বলতে আমরা যেটা বুঝি যে যারা বিভিন্ন সময় বিভিন্ন গ্রাম থেকে বা পাড়া থেকে তারা ভাঙনের কারণে বা কোনো প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগের কারণে তাদের ঘরবাড়ি হারিয়ে ফেলছে, সরকারিভাবে তাদেরকে আশ্রয়ের যে ব্যবস্থাটা করা হয়েছে সেটাকে আমরা গুচ্ছগ্রাম বলি।
সরকার ঘরবাড়ি করে দিল, আমাদের জায়গা জমি নেই। এখন পেশার মধ্যে যখন এই সরকারে ঘর করে দিল তখন মনে হয় সরকার আমাদের এই 40 ঘরে ঋণও দিচ্ছে। এই ভ্যান গাড়িতে আমরা কামাই করে খেয়েছি, আমাদের জায়গা জমি নেই। তরকারি পাতি যা কিছু এই বাজার থেকে কিনে এনে খেতে হয়, আমাদের একটা গাছও আমাদের বাড়িতে হয় না। ওই নদী ভেঙে নিয়ে গেছে, জায়গা জমি নাই, মানে নদী ভেঙে নিয়ে গেছে। এখানে আসছি যে আমি 40 পার হয়েছি, এটা নদী ছিল আমাদের বয়সেই বুঝে আমরা নদী দেখছি। এটা ওই যে চিছরা পার হয়ে আসছিলেন ওইটাই ছাড়ে গেলে পরে এটা কাঁচি চর ছিল, এইখানে মনে ঢাসা বালু ছিল, কোনো কিছু বাধা নেই, এটা কিন্তু একবারই বালু। এখনও হইলে পানি ওঠে, এখনও পানি ওঠে। এটা এই যে মনে করেন কামলা সিজন, ওই ধান কাটা আসলো 15 দিন করলো, 15 দিন করার পর কাজ নেই। আবার ওই পাট আসলো ওই 15 দিন, সিজনে 15 দিন, সামায় 15 দিন, আমরা কী করে হব?
প্রাথমিকভাবে নির্বাচিত অতি দরিদ্র খানায় সুনির্দিষ্ট প্রশ্নমালার মাধ্যমে খানাটিকে চূড়ান্তভাবে নির্বাচনে পরিচালিত জরিপকে খানা জরিপ বা সেন্সাস বলা হয়। খানা জরিপের মাধ্যমে নির্দিষ্ট খানার বিস্তারিত তথ্য গ্রহণ করা হয়, যা প্রকল্পের কার্যক্রম পরিকল্পনা সহ সুনির্দিষ্ট খানা নির্বাচনে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ভূমিকা পালন করে।
কাকা আদাব, ভালো আছেন?
ভালো আছি।
কাকি কেমন আছে?
আছি ভালো।
কাকি কই, বাড়িতে আছে না মাঠত গেছে কাম করবা?
মাঠত যায় নাই, মানে বাড়িতে আছে, মাঠত যাবে আর কি।
যাবে আর কি। আচ্ছা, ভাত খাইছেন?
ভাত খাইছি।
কি দিয়ে ভাত খাইছেন আজকে?
এই আজি কোনো তরকারি নাই আর কি, মানে এই শাক সবজি আর কি খাইছি।
আর ছেলে মেয়েগুলা কোথায় আছে?
ওরা কাজে গেছে।
কাজে গেছে?
একজন লেখাপড়া করে।
কাকা এলা মোক অনেক টাইম দিবা হবে, আধা ঘন্টাতে 1 ঘন্টা।
কি টাইম?
টাইম হচ্ছে আপনার কিছু তথ্য নিব। আপনি কিভাবে চলতেছেন, আপনার জীবনটা কিভাবে চলতেছে, ঠিক আছে? আপনার অর্থনৈতিক, তারপর আপনি কোনো কিছুর সুযোগ সুবিধা পান কিনা ইউনিয়ন পরিষদ থেকে, সব কিছু মিলে আপনার তথ্য নিব। সময় আছে তো আপনার?
আছে
আচ্ছা কাকা, আপনার আইডি কার্ড আছে? ভোটার আইডি কার্ড
আছে
আছে?
আছে
কাকিরও আছে?
আছে
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে। আর কাকা কি করেন? আপনার জীবনটা চলে কিভাবে?
এই
কি করে
জন্মজুরি
ইনকাম করেন?
জন্মজুরি করে খাই।
জন্মজুরি। কতজন ইনকাম করেন?
ধরো 3 জন।
3 জন। কে কে?
আমার ছেলে, আমার বউ আর আমি।
3 জনেই।
3 জন।
টাকা কত পান? দিনে কত পান?
ধরো আমার ছেলে 300 টাকা পায়, আমি 300 পাই,
আচ্ছা।
আর তোমার চাকরি আর 200 পায়।
কাকার পরিবারে এখন সদস্য কতজন?
সদস্য ধরো 6 জন।
6 জন। কে কে? আপনি, কাকি,
হ্যাঁ।
আপনার ছেলে আর
আর আমার একটা মেয়ে আছে।
মেয়েটার বয়স কত?
মেয়েটার বয়স ধরো প্রায় 15-16।
আর 2 জন?
আর 2 জন আমার বউ, কিবা
বৌমা।
বৌমা।
আচ্ছা।
আর আবার একটা নাতনি আছে।
সবাই একসাথে খান?
হ্যাঁ, সবাই একসাথে খাই। আর 2টা বেটা বেগল।
2টা বেটা বেগুন থাকে। আচ্ছা কাকা কতদূর পড়াশোনা করছেন?
পড়াশোনা করিনি।
কাকি?
তোমার কাকেও?
আর ছেলেগুলা?
ছেলেরা একটু কইছে আর কি, অল্প।
আর মেয়ে?
আর মেয়েটা মানে এইবার 7।
কোনোটা লোন নেওয়া আছে? লোন ঋণ
অল্প নিছি আর কি, চলে না।
কয়টা সংস্থার নেওয়া আছে? কয়টা সংস্থার নেওয়া আছে?
একটা।
একটা। কত নিছেন?
বেশি নিনি, অল্প।
অল্প। কয়টা কিস্তি দেওয়া হয়েছে?
দেওয়া মানে কেবল নিন তো।
কেবল নিছেন?
স্যার আসসালামু আলাইকুম স্যার। সত্তর মোহাম্মদ স্যার। স্যার আসসালামু আলাইকুম স্যার।
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম।
স্যার ভালো আছেন স্যার?
কি আল্লাহ রাখছে ভালো। আপনি ভালো?
জি স্যার, আলহামদুলিল্লাহ স্যার। আপনাকে দেখে খুব ভালো লাগলো স্যার।
থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ।
স্যার,
থ্যাংক ইউ। সবাইকে ভালো লাগছে দেখছি।
স্যার। স্যার আমরা সবাই কৃতজ্ঞ স্যার, আপনি আমাদের স্যার আহ্বানে আসছেন স্যার। আমরা স্যার খুব স্যার গ্রেটফুল আপনার প্রতি
ও
স্যার।
না, এটি তো আমার একটা সুযোগ আর কি, আপনাদের সঙ্গে ক্ষণিকের জন্য হলেও একটু দেখা সাক্ষাৎ হলো, এটাও তো বড় কথা। অনেক কিছু শেখবার আছে। থ্যাংক ইউ।
Dear audience, we are very delighted to announce that the chair of today's webinar,
আসসালামু আলাইকুম স্যার।
Dr. Kholifuzzahman Ahmad, Chairman
আসসালাম।
PPSC, has
ঠিক ভাই।
joined us.
স্যার আপনি এটা আনমিউট করেন স্যার। আপনি এটা আনমিউট করেন স্যার।
মলিক ভাই আপনার।
ওকে সত্তা মন্ডল, অনেকদিন পরে দেখলাম, কেমন আছো?
হ্যাঁ আছি, ভালো আছি। খলিক ভাই আপনি কেমন?
চলছে ভালো লাগছে দেখতে।
আপনাকে আগের মতোই সৌম্যশান্ত লাগছে।
একেবারে
ঋষি ঋষি মহাপুরুষ।
চেষ্টা করি টেনশন না নিতে আর কি, যা হয় চলে।
খুবই ভালো খলিক ভাই।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম। আচ্ছা, বাকি দাড়িটা একটু লম্বা হয়ে গেল মনে হয় নাকি?
এখন খুব একটা বেরোনো হয় না তো স্যার, এই জন্য খুব কাট্টু সাইজ হয় না খুব একটা।
আমি একবার অনেক 15-20 দিনে অনেক লম্বা হয়ে গিয়েছিল, পরে আর সেটা রাখিনি আর কি।
বাকি ভাই আপনাকে সালাম, কেমন আছেন?
আপনি ভালো আছেন আপনি স্যার?
ভালো আছি, থ্যাংক ইউ।
সপ্তাহ মন্ডলরা 4 ক্লাসমেট খুব বিখ্যাত। সপ্তাহ মন্ডল, শামসুল আলম, ডক্টর রাজাক এবং মুআজ্জম হোসেন, প্রফেসর মুআজ্জম হোসেন।
ইউ কিপ সেইং থ্যাংক ইউ।
4জনের সঙ্গে আমার খুব ভালো সম্পর্ক এবং 4জনকেই আমি দেখছি খুব ভালো করছে সব দিকে।
থ্যাংক ইউ।
মুআজ্জমের তো অনেক বই পাবলিশ হচ্ছে, এর থেকে স্প্রিঞ্জা থেকে বেরিয়েছে একটা, নভা থেকে বেরিয়েছে একটা।
হ্যাঁ সেদিন ও একটা ওয়েবিনার এসেছিল, তখন কথা হলো।
আরেকটা বেরোবে সম্ভবত স্প্রিঞ্জার, সেটার সঙ্গে আমিও জড়িত আছি আর কি।
হুম, রাইট। কি যেন বলছিল সে?
হ্যাঁ, একটা হয়েছে আমাদের জয়েন্ট, ওটা করছে নোভা, আর আরেকটা হবে স্প্রিঞ্জার। সেটা হচ্ছে ওই যে টুয়ার্ডস 2041 যে একটা সেমিনার করছিলাম, ওটার আউটকাম।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা। হ্যাঁ, না করতে থাকেন, দেখা যাক।
হ্যাঁ, এখন তো কি আর করা যায়, চেষ্টা করা যায় যতক্ষণ কাজ করার।
রাইট।
কাজ করা মানে লেখা বা পড়া।
জি।
আপনাদের অভিজ্ঞতার আলোকে এখনই তো লেখার সময় স্যার।
লেখার চেষ্টা করছি, কিন্তু কনসিস্টেন্টলি একটা কিছু ধরে রাখা যায় না, আবার শিফট হয়ে যায় ইন্টারেস্ট।
We are very glad to
আমাদের আজকে
announce
স্যার
that
চিফ গেস্ট স্যার
Mr. Abdul
ফাইন্যান্স
Rauf
সেক্রেটারি
Talukdar,
মিস্টার
Senior Secretary, Finance
আব্দুল
Division,
রউফ স্যার জয়েন করেছে স্যার আমাদের সাথে।
has joined us.
স্যার আসসালামু আলাইকুম স্যার।
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম, কেমন আছেন? অনেকদিন পরে দেখা হলো।
স্যার ভালো আছি, আপনি ভালো আছেন স্যার?
আছি মোটামুটি।
বেশ অনেকদিন পরে দেখা স্যার, দেখা টাকা নাই।
অনেকদিন পরে, হ্যাঁ, এখন তো দেখা হওয়া তো মুশকিল, না হলে তো অনেক দেখা হতো। তাহলে এইভাবে ভার্চুয়ালি হলেও তো দেখা হলো আর কি।
রাইট স্যার, তাও দেখা হলো আর কি।
আচ্ছা, আপনি তো চলে যাবেন, বোধহয় আরেকটা মিটিং আছে না?
স্যার আমার একটা মিটিং আছে, ওই যে পারচেজ কমিটির মিটিং আছে স্যার, ওটাতে আমি
তাহলে কি
জয়েন করব।
উপস্থাপনাটা দেখে যেতে পারবেন?
হ্যাঁ পারবো স্যার, আমি 11:15 পর্যন্ত আছি স্যার।
উপস্থাপনার পরে আপনি একটু বক্তব্য রেখে চলে যান তাই।
হ্যাঁ, সেটা হতে পারে স্যার। আমি ওই
পরে যদি আসতে না পারেন, পরে যদি আসতে না পারেন
11:15 পর্যন্ত থাকতে পারবো স্যার। আবার আমি হয়তো পরে
পরে আসবেন, না হলে বক্তব্যটা যদি রেখে যান এখন, তাহলে আমার মনে হয় ভালো হবে। নাও আসতে পারতে পারেন।
ঠিক আছে।
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে। তাহলে আমরা শুরু করি। সাহেব, আমরা শুরু করি তাইলে।
Assalamu alaikum and good morning everyone. Welcome to the webinar on completion of the Inception Phase of PPEPP project. Many of you may already know that PKSF is now implementing an extreme poverty program called Pathways to Prosperity for extremely poor people, PPEPP, shortly called Prosperity, with joint funding from US Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and European Union. The multidimensional program is working for the sustainable alleviation of extreme poverty of 1 million people living in 3 climate vulnerable regions of Bangladesh. The 6-year program covers 222 unions of 43 upazilas in 15 poverty-prone districts along the Tista and Brahmaputra river basin in northwest, How areas in northeast and the southwestern coastal belt. Before the full-scale rollout in April this year, PKSF undertook a one-year inception phase, including a piloting in randomly selected 17 unions to test and finalize the targeting and household selection process, as well as intervention and service delivery modalities. To share the learnings from the inception phase with you all, PKSF is organizing this webinar. PKSF Chairman Dr. Qazi Khalikuzaman Ahmad will preside over the webinar as the chair of the program, whereas Mr. Muhammad Moinuddin Abdullah, Managing Director PKSF, will provide the welcome speech. We are very glad to let you know that Mr. Abdul Rauf Talukdar, Senior Secretary, Finance Division, Ministry of Finance, has graced this occasion as the chief guest. It is also mentionable that Mr. Orijit Chaudhary, Additional Secretary, Financial Institutions Division, Ministry of Finance, will grace this occasion as the special guest. Dear participants, Ms. Judith Herbertson, Development Director, FCDO, and Mr. Marshajan, Head of Cooperation, Delegation of European Union to Bangladesh, will also join us today. They are also the special guests of this program. In order to sharing the lessons learned during the inception year, there will be a presentation delivered by Dr. A.K.M. Nuruzzaman, General Manager PKSF, and Dr. Sharif Ahmed Chaudhary, General Manager PKSF. I may inform you all that both of them played very important role into significant projects of PKSF, Ujjibito, and Prime respectively. which are related to the ultra port. Dr. A.K. Nuruzzaman had been the project coordinator of the Jivito project of PKSF, and Dr. Sharif Ahmed Choudhury had been the project coordinator of Time project. Prosperity project is a follow-up project of these two projects. We are glad to let you know that both of them have very vital role in this project as the advisors. Dear participants, we gladly announce that Professor M. A. Sattar Mondal sir and Professor M. A. Bakifalli sir are here with us as the honorable panelists. We cordially welcome today's other participants that include top government officials from the Ministry of Finance and other relevant ministries and departments, deputy commissioners and Upajila Nirvahi officers from the prosperity working areas, representatives from FCDO, EU, and other development organizations, academicians, extreme poverty experts, and executive officers of the implementing partner organizations. Dear participants, I may humbly request Chairman Sir to moderate the program onwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the introduction to the webinar. I welcome our chief guest on this occasion, Senior Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Mr. Abdul Rauf Talukdar, and the special guests. I can't pronounce this, Mr. Klan, I think that's good enough. Mr. Orijit Choudhury, and also the distinguished discussants, Dr. Abdul Sattar Mondal, Baki Khalili, Professor Baki Khalili, and all the other participants. At the outset, may I invite the Managing Director of Holy Commercial Foundation, Muhammad Moinuddin Abdullah, to deliver the welcome.
Honorable Chair, Dr. Qazi Khalikuzaman Ahmed, Chairman PKSF, Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Abdul Rauf Talukdar, Senior Secretary, Finance Division, Ministry of Finance, Honorable Special Guest, Mr. Arijit Choudhury, Additional Secretary, Financial Institution Divisions, Ministry of Finance, Ms. Judith Herbertson, Development Director to FCDO, Bangladesh, and Mr. Muarzio Sihan, Head of Corporation, Delegation to the European Union, Bangladesh. Distinguished panel discussion, Professor Dr. M. A. Sattar Mondal, former member of Planning Commission, and Professor Dr. Baki Khalili, extreme poverty expert, respected member of governing body and general body of PKSF, officials from various ministries and divisions and relevant departments, deputy commissioners and Upajila Nirvahi officers from the program areas, representatives from partner organization of PKSF and other participants, good morning to you all. December is the month of national glory. I begin by remembering with deep gratitude the sacrifice of Father of the Nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and all other liberation martyrs. Extreme poverty anywhere is a threat to human security everywhere, as former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan once said. We in PKSF believe this with all our heart. This is the reason why we put people-centric development at the top of our priority list to ensure dignified lives for all. Since inception in 1990, PKSF has been working relentlessly to ensure just that, lifting millions out of poverty in the process through employment generation and by offering financial and non-financial services that best meet their needs. By 2004, PKSF shifted its focus to mainstreaming ultra-poor programs as its core working area. In 2006, this Apex Development Organization undertook one of the most impact-creating poverty alleviation program, popularly known as PRIME, This program successfully eradicated Monga from the northern and other region of Bangladesh with funding from the UK government. Subsequently, another extreme poverty program, UPP Ujjibito, was implemented with great success with financial assistance from European Union. Equipped with the learnings from these programs, as well as other extreme poverty projects and programs implemented by PKSF and other organizations at home and around the world, PKSF launched a multidimensional program titled Pathways to Prosperity for Extremely Poor People, or Prosperity in Short, in 2019. The 6-year program is being implemented with financial assistance from UK government's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, formerly DFID, and European Union. The program aims to reach 1 million people belonging to 250,000 households living in the 3 climate vulnerable regions of Bangladesh out of extreme poverty by 2025. The focus of the Prosperity Program shifts away from traditional graduation model to pathways out of poverty approach and applies more tailored support package, including grants and soft loans with a longer intervention period, like we did in case of many of our previous programs, such as Prime and Ujjibito. Distinguished guests and participants, you are going to hear more about the Prosperity Program and its approach in the next presentation by 2 of our esteemed colleagues, Dr. Sharif Ahmed Chaudhry and Dr. A.K.M. Nuruzzaman, who spearheaded Prime and Ujjibita programs and are now Livelihoods and Climate Change Advisor of the Prosperity Project. We are hopeful, confident enough that the Prosperity Program will make significant contribution in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the 7th five-year plan of the Bangladesh government, as Bangladesh inches closer to become a middle-income country. Today's dissemination event aims to give you a glimpse of the progress made so far and share the key learning from the inception phase of the Prime program. We hope the learning will guide us to undertake the program activities in the main implementation phase in a way that creates better and more sustainable impact. On behalf of PKSF, I take this opportunity to thank our development partners, especially FCDO and EU, for their support in tackling extreme poverty in Bangladesh. We would also like to extend our sincere gratitude to the relevant ministries, especially Finance Division and Financial Institution Divisions of Ministry of Finance, for their constant support in realizing the mandate of PKSF. Finally, we are thankful to our chief guests and special guests for their presence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah. Now the presentation. Dr. Sharif Ahmad Chaudhry and Dr. Nuruzzaman, 2 of them will make the presentation. But our chief guest has to go at 11:15. I was thinking if we could give him some time before he goes after the presentation. So if you keep within the time limit.
Meeting
Sharif, Nuruzzaman, keep within the time limit, please.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Respected sir, dear colleagues, assalamu alaikum. Good morning. My name is Akim Nuruzzaman. Myself and Dr. Sharif Ahmad Chaudhry, we will jointly cover the presentation today. Sir, we will be very brief today. So, dear colleagues, more than 700 million people of the world are struggling for their survival and meeting their basic needs. In Bangladesh, according to highest 2016, there are more than 40 million people below the poverty line, and half of them are extremely poor. We all know that. And we know the global poverty is expected to rise for the first time in over 20 years as the disruption of COVID-19 pandemic compounds with other forces like other shocks and climate change. Poverty reduction is therefore identified by the world community as an ethical, social, political, economic imperative of mankind. As they call on governments and policymakers to address the root causes of poverty and to ensure that the poor have access to productive resources. With the support from the government of Bangladesh and the development partners, PKSF has been implementing programs that are human-centric, inclusive, and climate resilient. In the era of inclusive and sustainable development, poverty reduction is the top priority in achieving the targets set in the Sustainable Development Goals and our national perspective plans and 5-year plans. It is also important to establish an inclusive society which is defined by the United Nations as a society for all, in which every individual, each with rights and responsibilities, has an active role to play. And we all know people who cannot meet the basic needs of life with their income and savings are generally called them a poor. In the discourse of human-centric development, poverty entails more than the lack of income and productive resource to ensure sustainable livelihoods. Its manifestations include hunger and malnutrition, limited access to education and other basic services, social discrimination and exclusion, as well as lack of participation in decision-making, vulnerability due to climate change and other shocks, the feeling of being unwanted, and capability deprivation, and so on. So PKSF endorses various social groups bear disproportionate burden of poverty. So there is an intersectionality in poverty where multiple layers of vulnerabilities exist. Poverty is multidimensional. PKSF is committed in addressing all dimensions of poverty, and PKSF promotes people-centered approach to poverty reduction, advocating the empowerment of people living in poverty through their full participation in all aspects of life. And PKSF endorses the importance of both economic development and the human rights for the poor. PKSF suggests an integrated strategy towards poverty reduction, necessitates implementing policies geared to more equitable distribution of wealth and income, social protection coverage, and expanding opportunities with necessary protection and empowerment. We deeply acknowledge to the efforts of the government of Bangladesh and the development partners such as FCDU, European Union, World Bank, IFAD, JICA, and many others through different projects and programs such as Enrich, CLP, CFPR, Prime, Ujjibito for reducing poverty significantly here in the country. Bangladesh have achieved a significant progress in reducing poverty. You can see in this graph, poverty was 82.9% in 1974, which came down to 20.5% in 2019. Definitely, these are the pre-COVID data. PKSA has been involved in extremely poor poverty reduction since 1998 with the support of the government of Bangladesh and development partners. And we also have a very special kind of project, Enrich, in 2010. So the objectives of the today's prosperity project to enable the 2 million people to exit from extreme poverty for good in 2 phases, and to support the development and stronger national institutions and systems to deliver the public and private services required by extremely poor people to become resilient and prosper. The project has some key results to achieve. In brief, up to 1 million extremely poor people exit extreme poverty and make significant progress along a pathways towards prosperity with better nutrition, social status, increased resilience to climate change and other shocks. And I would like to highlight the purpose of the inception phase. In that phase, the project is working on revisiting the targeting criteria, setting the suitable implementation arrangement, preparing appropriate interventions, and developing capacities of PIU and downstream partner organization, and developing necessary standard operating procedures and frameworks. So this is the short list that what we have done in the phase. So I'm not going to explain all this. So here is the working area. You can see in the northwest, the charts and the ethnic communities, and southwest, the mainly coastal areas, and the northwest, Haur areas. These are all climate vulnerable areas and hard to reach areas. So today, I'm going to say a few words about the targeting is vital for any targeted program. We all know that. And based on our previous learning and stakeholder consultation, this time, this project uses 5 core proxy indicators: occupation, landholding, income, housing type, earning members. And in addition to these 5 core indicators, we use 5 supplementary proxy indicators: female-related households, households dependent on child labor, households with consumption rationing, households with persons with disabilities, and households of ethnic minority, Dalit, and third gender. For ensuring authenticity, we have followed different tools and done triangulations. We developed a tool called Participatory Extreme Poor Identification Technique, PEPIT. The study considers around 31,981 households with a total population of 161,189. In the working area, we have found that the 39% are extreme poor. There is a variation in different regions and groups. In the ethnic communities, the rate is 70%. Please be noted that these are the pre-COVID data. We have verified the data collected from the field using proxy indicators with the national poverty line. As per the cost of basic needs method, around 93.44% people live below the lower poverty line, which indicates that targeting accuracy is quite high. At the current survey household represent the lowest 35% of the nationally defined extreme poor line. It represents better targeting, and the project focus on the lowest segment of the extreme poor groups. Now, here is the distribution of per capita income. In summary, the per capita monthly income, you can say from here, nearly 90% of the extreme poor households are below BDT 2,000 taka. Single earner is the predominated feature, and nearly 90% extreme poor households of Haur and ethnic community have single or no earners. The residents of the housing and extreme poor houses, nearly 33% extreme poor houses do not have their own homestead land. In ethnic groups, it is 48%. Here is the distribution of household members. The project needs to cater different demographic groups to ensure life cycle needs and they ensure sustainable poverty reduction. This project is aware about the intergenerational poverty gap. And now the land and access to credit and safety nets, 100% of them are functionally landless. You can see there are few of them are only 11 to 20 decimal land, and most of them are less than 10%, and a large share of them are landless. And 35% of them have access to MFIs, and though some of them are out of the government safety net services, but there are some households with diverse safety net services from the government. The head of the household in extreme poor family, so 17.4 of them are female-headed houses. There are some female houses. You can see from these data, they are 32.84%. They are living by themselves. They do not have anyone to support them. They are the most destitute members of our surveyed households. The major occupation of the extreme poor houses, the day labor is the major, is around 60% of them from occupation, and followed by a small business in all areas. Next, the food security during the lean period, 41% food unsecured, and it is the highest in the ethnic community. And next, and the diversity, average household dietary diversity score of the extreme poor houses is 2.23 out of 7 number scale. The lowest household SDDS observed in the Haur area proportion of dietary protein and fruit sources are very, very low, which have a negative consequences on the cognitive development. We all know that. So this is the disability of the extreme poor houses. So around 4.7% houses has at least one disabled member. And you can see the South has the highest level of all forms of disability, followed by Howard. We have followed Washington group protocols for surveying this disability data. And that is all about the covariate shocks and their coping strategies. About 38% of the households are exposed to different covariate risk. So we use 1 year recall data for this. And South has the highest exposure to natural calamities, and 37% household adopted different coping strategies. Please note that there are some negative, coping strategies too. So which is a catastrophic impact on their poverty level in future. So I'm not going to explain this econometric model. I'm just giving a brief snapshot for this logistic regression. The result of the logistic regression models are presented in the form of marginal effects, which indicates change in the probability of being extreme poor if the independent variable change by 1 unit. In model 1, the female-headed households with primary occupation as day labor, households having disabled persons are more likely to be poor. Probability of extreme poverty also increases if households head is aged and the if dependency ratio is high. Next, we introduce some policy instrument to see how this affects the probability of being extreme poor. This is evident from the model 2 that if households have multiple income sources, then the probability of being extreme poor reduced by 1%. And model 2.1 is found that if households receive training, then probability of generating multiple income sources increase by almost 7%, and almost probability of being extreme poor reduces by 1% if the households have ownership of livestock. Model 2 and 3 validate the requirement of incorporating the livelihood components of the program, and model 4 justifies the incorporating nutrition components. So I'm not going to say the whole things for saving the time. So this kind of analysis help us to undertake intervention to address multidimensional aspects of extreme poverty. For example, undertaking activities to advance economic policy reform, poverty alleviation, social mobilization, inclusion initiative, particularly with persons with disabilities, people from the ethnic communities, working collaboratively with the government of Bangladesh at various levels for expanding safety net programs, and also working with the vulnerable population to support creation of jobs and incomes, particularly connecting extremely poor people to markets and employment opportunities, being product capabilities and capacity, and working on climate adaptation and disaster management, integrating gender equality and women's empowerment issue. So I'm stopped here. I'm handing over to Dr. Sharif Ahmed Chaudhary to the rest of the presentation. He will be very brief.
Thank you, Dr. Nurjaman. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. As Dr. Nurjaman was saying, that these are some of the issues that affect that determine the extreme poverty of in households. So we have to address mostly the livelihood, nutrition, community mobilization, and the effect of the disaster and climate vulnerabilities, disability, and women empowerment. So our approach would be not the traditional graduation model. It would be a sustainable pathway out of poverty. And this is about where we postulate that our prosperity project, different intervention will gradually improve the economic and financial conditions of our extreme poor household through different services, and it will be initially, and then at higher level, we'll be adding some of the value chain intervention and market link services. And together with that, we'll be providing some social mobilization activity that hinders the growth of the extreme poor people. And all this will systematically improve the condition of the extreme poor household towards the main same stream of growth. But still some of them will be left behind. So there is a policy component in this project where we expect that that will help government in funding more fund for the poverty reduction effort, so that these extreme poor people are helped out. Now, to address this, to implement that theory, we have 6 components within the this PPEC program, where we have livelihood, nutrition, community mobilization, disability, women empowerment, and disaster and climate change components. This will be implemented by our PKSF, and some 3 components like market development, policy advocacy, life cycle grant. This would be implemented by project management unit of DFID or FCDO. Now, how the strategy we are thinking for improving the economic condition of the A is to actually improve their employment opportunity, diversify their income sources, and reduces the incidence of their income loss. So in doing that, we will be addressing our extreme poor household with different project interventions, which will help to create different income generating activities that will create self-employment, to some extent employment. But in addition to that, we will also establish micro enterprises in the non-poor community, within the extreme poor community, which would be through our mainstream program. So combination of these two will bring out the actually our extreme poor people pathway out of their poverty. And for doing that, actually we'll be establishing different resilient livelihood activities, which is farm and off-farm based. We'll be providing financial services, capacity development services, technical services, market access, micro enterprise development. And obviously this has to be resilience against climatic shocks. And we also be providing some of the activities like disaster and gender responsive livelihood services. And we also, through our community mobilization component, we will link these services, different government and private sector services for the growth of this extreme poor community. And this will be on union-based level. Through using our GIS system, we actually, for each union, we already have this data on the topography, land coverage, hazard mapping, physical structure, and based on those, we will actually determine what kind of livelihood they will be taking. For example, Shognali Union of Asasani of Satkira, almost 80% area is actually saline, and it's mostly shrimp cultivation is going on there. There are some opportunity for farming, crop farming, and almost 70% of these extreme poor household in those areas involved with as a day laborer. So based on these data, we actually come up with what kind of livelihood activity of like saline tolerant crop species, different aquaculture practices, different livestock related activity, and different non-farm activities. And as far as the nutrition is concerned, we are actually focusing on the actually most vulnerable section of the household, like pregnant and lactating women, under 5 children, adolescent girl. And we will be addressing in 3 using 3 strategies like nutrition specific intervention, nutrition sensitive intervention, and nutrition related advocacy. Now for nutrition specific intervention, we will be using some all 16 direct nutrition intervention of NNS, and 5 nutrition sensitive intervention, and 3 nutrition rooted advocacy. And for the community mobilization, we will be actually using different forums, access to information, access to services, social behavior change, communication, behavioral change towards claiming services. All these would be brought under the mobilization activity. Obviously, towards the end of the project of our inception phase, we faced with the COVID situation. So this has created an unprecedented situation, but it has, we undertook to address this challenge. We actually took emergency assistance program for the extreme poor household, At the same time, our partner organization also linked those of targeted extreme poor households with different government and other public and private sector service providers. And in addition to that, we took the challenge of monitoring and evaluation by using online communication system, that means the virtual A. And inherently, both PKSF and our partner organization, we are following standard financial management practice, so there is no risk of any financial misappropriation in our system. As far as the safeguarding against the sexual harassment is concerned, both PKSF and our partner organization is very gender responsive working environment, and we strictly follow the High Court division directives, which actually is similar to the SIA of the FCDO. And these actually essentially eliminate any chance of sexual harassment to the extreme poor women or girls. So what do we learn from this inception phase? As far as targeting is concerned, this proxy indicator based system has given us targeting efficiency over 93%. And our ODK based system has enabled us to provide real-time disaggregated data. And as far as the implementation arrangement is concerned, we actually working with 19 of our very top partner organizations who have the experience of working in diverse hard-to-reach area. And we set up multidisciplinary work plan, a workforce of over 1,400 people. And more importantly, how do we design it? Actually, in designing the extreme poor program, we have to know the extreme poor household itself. We need to know their ability. We need to know their vulnerability. We need to know the potentiality of the area. And also what the local people thinks about it, what the local administration, local government, and the development partners and POs thinks about this. Based on this, we can take actually a suitable intervention that will essentially actually create pathway out of poverty. And we have these things need a special kind of skills and motivation. So far, we have trained over 2,000 staff for the PPAP program. We have developed all our necessary frameworks, SOPs for working under this A. So what? Now, we came up with that inception phase where we tested some of the procedure, which we found very effective. Now, this is being started. We have started implementing in 188 unions in 4 regions. And essentially, we had started program interventions in those areas. For example, in our area, we have set up community-based floating case fish farming, which is climate resilient itself. We have started distribution of emergency cash assistance program, which is essentially a COVID response. And this COVID, by doing that, actually PPAS has now become extended as a COVID rapid response program, thanks to our development partner, especially FCDO, European Union, and the government of Bangladesh. So we hope that this program will lead us to extreme poverty reduction to start with, and at some stage elimination from this country, which is very more important now than it was before the COVID situation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Sharif. Thank you, Nuruzzaman, for keeping within the time limit. We have to make a slight change in our program because our chief guest has to go for another meeting. So I will request him to make his comments now. But before that, just one sentence. PKSF works within the framework of broad policy regime of the government of Bangladesh. And human centricity, multidimensionality, and integrated approach. All these principles can be traced back to the ideals of War of Liberation. And the present government, led by Sheikh Hasina, upholds all these principles in the process of development. So may I now request Mr. Abdul Talukdar, Senior Secretary, Finance Division, Ministry of Finance, Chief Guest on this occasion, to make his remarks, please.
Thank you, sir. Respected Chair, Dr. Kaji Khalikujaman Ahmed, Chairman PKSF, Mr. Mohammad Moinuddin Abdullah, Managing Director PKSF, special guests, distinguished panelists, representatives from different ministries and departments, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. First of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks and gratitude to the organizer for inviting me at this webinar. December is the month of our great victory. I pay my homage to the greatest Bengali of all times, father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The father of the nation had a long cherished aspiration that people of this country will enjoy economic emancipation and 3 square meals a day. It is a great pleasure to be here with you at this webinar on the completion of Inception Phase under the Pathways to Prosperity for Extremely Poor People program. Distinguished guests, our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, dreamed of a poverty-free Bangladesh. After independence, he undertook various initiatives to eradicate extreme poverty and improve nutritional status for building a healthy nation. But it was not easy to start over for a war-torn economy. Despite all the challenges, he made painstaking efforts to eradicate poverty and ensure sustainable economic growth. After all these decades, Bangladesh now seems to have come to the end of the tunnel, aspiring to become a middle-income country. This, however, will not be possible as long as there are extreme poverty and vulnerable communities, especially in some hard-to-reach areas. Tackling poverty in those areas and lifting the extreme poor people living there in a sustainable way is all the more difficult. I applaud PKSF, FCDO, and European Union to take that very important responsibility by undertaking Pathways to Prosperity for Extremely Poor program. Dear colleagues, Bangladesh is playing its role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. We have made remarkable progress in human development indicators. Our poverty rate has also demonstrated an impressive improvement, falling by about 1.7 percentage points per year. In the last few decades, we achieved remarkable success in poverty reduction efforts thanks to a joint push by government and non-government organizations. But the pace of change is decelerating. Recurring natural hazards like cyclone, floods, and health hazards like COVID-19 risks reversing decades-long progress in the fight against poverty. In this context, the challenge that the government and development organizations face is enabling extreme poor people graduate out of poverty as well as stopping them from falling back to their previous condition. I am very happy to learn that the program performed very well during the inception phase, even amid the COVID-19 pandemic. It gives me immense pleasure also to learn that, first, targeting of the extreme poor households under the program has been highly accurate. Second, the program's working area located in climate vulnerable areas indeed needed urgent attention. Third, the program's multidimensional interventions will address poverty and its causes in a sustainable way. Fourth, the program launched an emergency cash support initiative for more than 30,000 extreme poor people. And fifth, the program made good use of various virtual platforms to train and mobilize field staff and communicate with the program participants. I believe this kind of program will be instrumental in reduction of extreme poverty in Bangladesh. Ladies and gentlemen, Bangladesh governments under the able leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina responded to COVID-19 was prompt and effective, which saved billions of jobs, helped business to remain afloat, and provided food and cash supports to most of the marginalized people. Government also allocated 5 billion taka to PKSF to enhance their credit program during the pandemic period. However, people in the lower income group have been the most affected by the coronavirus pandemic. I'm confident that prosperity program will prove to be a successful model to enable extreme poor people to exit extreme poverty and to connect them to mainstream economic growth and jobs. Finally, I would like to thank the development partners and international community for their support and reinforce our development efforts. I hope they'll continue to support us in the coming months and years for sustainable socio-economic upliftment of the extreme poor people of Bangladesh. Sir, I'm extremely sorry I have to leave now to join another meeting, but I love to stay furthermore. Thank you, sir, for your passion sharing.
It's all right. Thank you very much for being with us this morning and making this statement. Thank you. Now let's go back to the program. And according to the program, now we have comments from our two distinguished discussants. Dr. M.S. Sattar Mandal first. Sattar. Sattar Mandal, are you here?
Sorry, thank
okay,
you.
You are here, good.
Right. Okay, thank you very much indeed, Honorable Chair, distinguished chief guest, special guest, honorable co-discussant and panelists, and distinguished participants from Bangladesh and beyond Bangladesh. I'm very pleased to be able to join this webinar of PKSF, which has been working very consistently and with a lot of success to reduce poverty and improve livelihoods of millions of poor people in Bangladesh. And I am very pleased to be here this morning to learn a new project which has been launched and has passed very successfully. It's the first initial year, and the project is Pathways to Prosperity for Extremely Poor People. I like the name, PPEPP. It's very easy to pronounce as well. So what I have learned from the distinguished presentation of Nuruzzaman and Sharif is something which is very encouraging. Number one is that this survey, the pilot survey, has been done with a purpose, and the purpose is that the targeted extreme poor households are rightly selected because there are ample examples in this country and elsewhere that in many cases of poverty reduction type of projects, many households are selected not always on objective basis, but on many considerations, including socio-political consideration. So one of the purposes, the main purpose of this pilot survey has been to validate the selection of these targeted extreme poor households, and I'm very pleased to learn that the households that have been surveyed represent 35% of the lowest income households of the country. And that is quite consistent with anybody's expectation. So congratulations to PKSF for this. My second point is that the pilot survey or the project's overall goal is to follow a adjustment of graduation model, graduation from poverty to a non-poverty level. That is good because it shifts focus from a traditional graduation model to, as the presentation says, the sustained pathways out of poverty approach. But then I would like to add that this approach involves tailoring to the needs of different categories of extreme poor, meaning that the four areas with distinct ecological characteristics will have different kind of needs of these extreme poor households. And I would believe that in the project, this particularly characteristics of this different ecological region will be reflected in the design of interventions of this project. That's good. But what I would like to add here that it is still on the needs of different categories that has been emphasized. I'd like to add here that emphasis on household resource endowment is not only need, but the resource endowment of this extreme poor household is also important to us. And then anybody can ask initially that, okay, they don't have much really because they don't have any land. And most people have, almost households have less than 10 decimals of land as their homestead or anything. But I would like to emphasize that that 10 decimals is not only a physical space or land, it's more than that. Because that 10 decimals of land, there are families who don't have any land at all, but they are living somewhere else really. But I am talking about the mainstream, the major bulk have at least some places to live in. So they have more than this physical space really. I would like to add that they have in their resource endowment access to open space really, access to sunlight, access to temperature. And that could be important land resource really which can be converted into wealth creation, to use the term of Adam Smith. How technology is coming in, we can think about that really, that this household resource is within the access and ability of these household members to utilize these physical and non-physical space resources, really. Like vertical utilization of space really nowadays. We hear the soilless cultivation. We hear about the aquaponics where you can grow your high value vegetables with fish recirculating the same water really. It's not any high tech anymore really. It could be done because they have some space or they're living somewhere. One can grow grass on trays for animal feeds, and very emerging sector again. One can use cocoa dust instead of soil really for raising seedling. And I have known many poor families in the north are being trained and being supported to do that, to take as an enterprise really. My next point is that, in my view, that the attention is not only given to individuals in the extreme poor family who can use their labor or muscle power, but for that they have to be physically able and healthy. But that is a risk point as well, because if there is any accident or any catastrophe, then the income flow to the family can be halted overnight really. So I would like to see this kind of new approach, the adjusted graduation model, to look at the family as an enterprise organization. I would call family enterprise organization. And it's a composite production unit that can be emphasized really. Like household enterprise, like you have seen the vermicompost. It grows earthworm from soil, whatever soil they have, with some little inputs really given and training. We have also other resources like poultry waste in this country. The scientists now tell us that there are about 3 million tons of poultry waste in terms of droppings, feathers, and offals in the countryside, most of it, and also in the urban areas. Those could be utilized for making biofertilizers from feathers. And also at a higher level, these feathers can be used for as a raw material to make warm clothes really at a higher level, and China is doing that. So what I'm saying that once you look at a family as a composite production unit, then you can combine this kind of very indigenous but innovative resources around what you need for poultry waste management. You need organizational support, which PKSF or organizations like PKSF are the right type of organization to provide this kind of support, that organizational support for collection of this waste from marketplaces, from households, and then you give them some short training. And above all, you need linking these new products, indigenous products, and they are productive resources really. They are not consumption goods straight away. You can link these products with the supply chain. My last point would be sponsored community-based initiatives, which PKSF has been emphasizing for long. But I would like to add a new dimension to that, that go beyond only the social mobilization, the advising them and then giving them good confidence building type of support or financial credit support. We can now open up new areas which are unutilized or underutilized, like chore land cropping, which probably PKSF is supporting in the north really. But I now know that there are about 0.5 million hectares of chore land along the banks of this big river system like Tista, Jamuna, and Padma. And much of these shoreland areas could be used for onion, spices, maize, or vegetables. A number of organizations are doing sandbar cropping already, really. So what you need, again, you need organizational support for training, the input supply, and linking all these products really. And these onions and spices are now very useful, a kind of product which has got a demand, which has got market, but you need a support which goes beyond the family support or individual level support. It has to be sponsored community-based support. Really, it's a new area. It's a little bit higher level of enterprise, but I can see this extreme poor household could be involved in this kind of project and can have a very positive long-run impact on graduation process. And before I end, I would finally like to emphasize on a pet subject, which I keep saying, that linking these poor women to high value-added product processing and marketing is another subject. And the point I bring in is the processing of small indigenous species of fish, like this mola, dhela, chela. It's a highly nutritious fish and food. But one thing which limits our consumption in the marketplaces is how we process those really. But there are small scales, there are some waste materials in them. They have to be cleaned really. But we cannot always do that really, and then we sometimes refrain ourselves from buying this fish, a small fish.
Okay.
Just because we don't have to have any mechanism to process that. Now this is for women can be organized really for creating a new market for this new kind of products really. So that can be linked to the terminal market. And that another way of graduation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Sattamandal, thank you very much for your comment. Two things. One, the existing resources of households. I think that's an important point that you have made. This is something we have been doing in other projects. You make sure that the existing resources are utilized to the best possible manner, and then add to that. So that's what I think you are saying, and this is something we are already doing. And the other things that you have said, onions and spices and all that, we have other activities, but these are beyond this project probably. But as far as possible, I think that would incorporate some of the comments that you have made. Okay, then let me now go to Professor Bakir Khalili. I hope you will also make brief comments like Sattamandal, please.
Thank you very much, respected chair, special guest, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and assalamu alaikum. I will try to be brief, but it is always difficult to follow Professor Sattamandal. His comments were very comprehensive and he left little room for me to make comments on. So I must thank you for his excellent comments. I will look at it in a different way, given my own experience with different projects of PKSF, like Prime, Ujjibito, Enrich. First thing that I must say that PKSF is a hub of new knowledge about sustainable poverty alleviation, about integrated development. Although I have always complained that PKSF is not publishing this knowledge in the form of book that can be made available to others. But nevertheless, PKSF stands alone as a hub for new knowledge. So what the empirical evidence say, particularly the projects of PKSF, Prime, Enrich, then Ujjibito, what it says. Basically, a couple of findings emerge from those empirical evidences of those projects that I just mentioned. One, that poverty is not unidimensional, it is multidimensional. Therefore, a unidimensional approach like, say, only pure access to credit is not sufficient. And that is well established. Secondly, we know that economic empowerment, social empowerment, human development, women empowerment, these are integrated and integral part of any poverty alleviation process. So that those are the evidences. Therefore, these evidences do suggest that for sustainable poverty alleviation, it is important that the project addresses multidimensional aspects of poverty. That is the critical findings, and that is being said off and on for decades, that have been said that poverty, and particularly multidimensional poverty, drew the attention following the thesis of Professor Amartya Sen and subsequently applied research by Alkar and Foster. So those now are critical part. Now let me see, why am I saying all these things? I'm saying it because that is in the context I would like to look at this PPET project. It is also a multidimensional project. It covers all relevant dimensions of poverty. Therefore, first thing that I must applaud PKSF and the donors for coming out with a comprehensive program. But we need to first, we need to look at a couple of things, whether the project design fulfills all the desired requirements. First thing, define goal. Project should have clear goal, defined goals with clarity. And that is very critical element. And I just mentioned that critical, what should be the critical goals. And we have heard the presentation of Dr. Sharif, and he was referring to the pathways. So I think that is first thing, that it satisfies the first requirement, that the project is well defined. Secondly, whether it is well targeted, and as has been made in the presentation and also made remarks by Professor Satramandal sir, that targeting based on the evidences that was presented, that it has more than 99% targeting efficiency has been attained. That is based on the pilot survey data analysis. So that is a clear, that is another thing, that this project is a critically well targeted. Next is the placement of the program. You know, this is the critical question, that all the empirical evidences, there are two schools of thoughts. One school of thought always thought without RCT, all evidences are not really correct. So those debate of RCT and non-RCT or quasi-RCT, those debate is there. So I always thought that there should be a program that should follow some framework of RCT. And I knew about it, and that in this PPEP has placed their program first thing randomly, so that bias is to a significant extent, except those targeting the ethnic minority, Dalit, and the people areas in Howard. By and large, they have placed these programs areas randomly. Therefore, future evidences based on the data of this randomly selected household will be unbiased. So this is one. So I think, and I must thank the management of PKSA project team for coming out with this idea of placing the program on random basis. So I will say it does satisfy the initial condition of RCT. So therefore, the evidences that will be gathered from this study will be, from this project, will be very sound and scientifically accepted. That is one. Third is benchmark data. Most of the cases, the analysis, empirical evidences, the progress, the impact, monitoring, these suffer significantly for lack of benchmark data. And quite happy to learn and quite happy to see that PKSA PPEP has collected benchmark data in some selected by unions, but I am expecting that they should have this data, benchmark data collected from all the households under the projects. That will not only be useful for monitoring and impact assessment, but it will also be important to follow the households on scientific and rational basis. Fundamental issue with this project is its vulnerable population. This, as was mentioned in the presentation, that it targets the vulnerable groups. This is one of the major studies that targets Howard area, that targets ethnic minority group, that targets the vulnerable population in North and South. So virtually this project addresses the vulnerable population, and it addresses the climate vulnerability. And in this case, I'm sure that PKSF has utilized or will, I hope they have utilized the knowledge derived from PRIME, derived from NRES. So all this new knowledge they may have used in designing the program. The challenge that will be faced in this project is certainly they have addressed already, but that will be the impact of COVID-19. Many moderate poor now have become extreme poor and maybe belong to the worst of the extreme group. So this is one part. This is it has not only made the extreme poor household more vulnerable, but also many moderate poor more vulnerable than many extreme. So there is a challenge. I do not know to what extent this project will be able to address this. My another comment is, normally all these projects that we have seen in the past focus on at the household level or at the individual level. But extreme poverty cannot be alleviated only through interventions at the household level or individual level, because extreme poverty is not only an outcome. And I often say this thing that Nelson Mandela this is a famous quote, that poverty is human created. Therefore it can be solved. And I truly believe that it is largely human created. That means this crisis of extreme poverty is not function of the characteristics of the extreme households only, but also of the environment they operate in, they live in the environment. So therefore, any program design should look beyond the household. And I'm quite happy to see that in this project, one of the elements will be focusing on market development. But I want to be a little bit more specific about it, that not all extreme poor will look for self-employment. There will be many risk-averse or extreme poor households. They will be looking for wage employment. And in that case, you need to create employment opportunity. You need to develop enterprises that will create wage employment opportunities for many. Therefore, I'm suggesting, and it has been recognized in this paper, but I'm more explicit about it, that it should make substantial investment in micro and small enterprise, particularly at the village level, so that village economy is strengthened, and that will have ultimate multiplier impact on sustainable graduation, sustainable extreme poverty education. So that is what will be my one strong argument. So please not focus only on, you have recognized the market development, you have recognized the investment in micro and small enterprise, but that is what I would like to see more seriously. My last comment, I know that my last comment would be that this is basically dealing with vulnerable group, but vulnerability cannot be only minimized through household interventions or only community interventions, because extreme poor households lack the ability to cope with covariate shocks. Therefore, I always expect, and I am expecting in this project, there must be a way to minimize the risk caused by covariate shock. There are two ways to go about it. I do not know whether there is an opportunity for PKSF to, the one I am suggesting is first, one way will be to make the provision for insurance. So through insurance mechanism, one will be able to minimize risk of vulnerable. Second is to link with government social safety net program. I think this should be closely linked because this evidences are available that households with access to government social safety net program have proven to be less vulnerable. So these are some basic issues that I thought I raised with this, but I have all the appreciation for PKSF, and I must thank the donor FCDO and European Union for coming out with to support this comprehensive project. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Baki Khalili, for your comments. Yes, it's very difficult to deal with vulnerable people. Vulnerability not only in economic, social, but it's also social vulnerability that you have been referring to, but also climate vulnerable. So we are trying to combine all these vulnerabilities together so that we can address them. But your comment, I think, is extremely important, that environment is important, social environment and economic environment, not just household and the individual. So you have to address the individual as well, individual and households. That's absolutely necessary, but also the environment is extremely important. So let me now open the floor, and we are going a bit late, not very late because our chief guest has already spoken, but slightly behind time schedule. So I would like to ask our commentators from the floor to take no more than 4 minutes if possible. Unless there is anything very urgent, then one can go to at best five minutes. I understand there are some, there are deputy commissioners from Satkira, Thakurgaon, and perhaps Bola. Are any one of you present, deputy commissioners?
जी सर, अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
जी, this is Mustafa Kamal from Deputy Commissioner Satkira.
Okay, please go ahead.
First of all, I would like to thanks PKSF and today the Honorable Chair of this webinar and respected Chief Guest and respected presenters. I listened carefully all of the presenter, especially our chief guest.
Oh God, got disconnected or something.
It shuffled the situation.
Now we can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be with this webinar. And, we all know that PKSF is the pioneer organization of our country who are jointly working with the government to alleviate poverty from Bangladesh. And in Satkira, which I observed here for last 2 years, that there are so many NGOs, they are working to alleviate poverty and working with the grassroots. But especially I would like to mention about the activities of some NGOs who is under the cover of PKSF, especially Unnoyan Prochesta. They are clearly distinguished from others. And we know that this is the month of December and it is also our victory month. And I would like to pay tribute to our great national leader, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who is the architect of our independence. And from our independence, we saw from the presentation that the reduction rate of poverty in from 1974 to 2019, it is really, and from last 9 to 10 years, the reduction of poverty is significant, especially in Asia and also in the world scenario, and which made the potential leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. As because we know that a country when is led by the inspiration of liberation, that really touches the mind of the people, and the people can understand what should be done. And in this perspective, our country is now moving forward to alleviate poverty and to be the most developed country in 2041. And we have some goals, and I do believe that if we want to achieve those goals, and we have to be very much we have to be very calculative in our actions, and from the government side and also from all NGOs, and GO and NGO will look after our all development programs and the goals, especially the SDGs, how we can achieve our SDG target within 2030, as because there are so many parameters which is not easily gateable. For that reason, the Bangladesh government has given the highest importance to this sector. And also the government has initiated APA, and this APA has created enormous development in progress into achieve our SDG goal. And we have also perspective plans, and we have delta plans. All these plans we have to make sure and is possible, as because we the people of Bangladesh, and we have achieved our freedom in 1971, and cost of the 30 lakhs of people and the sacrifices of our mothers and sisters. So we have that determination and we can achieve it. If the footings which we are going now, and we are now celebrating 100 years celebration of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and just we will task our 50 years celebration of independence 2021. You 1st January it will start. So this is a momentum. And during this COVID situation, the Bangladesh has shown the leadership of Sheikh Hasina has created a significant role in the world history, how this pandemic situation could be properly managed. And I'm really proud to be a citizen of Bangladesh, and also at this moment I'm serving as a deputy commissioner here at Satkira, and we really got the inspiration from our Honorable Prime Minister and the people of Bangladesh. I just want to say that no sector, yes, our doctors, they played the vital role. Nevertheless, the whole people of our country got together and we fought against COVID. And I also thanks to PKSF, they just extended their contribution to come forward for the people who were affected in the COVID situation. And Unnayan Prochesta here, they don't. I don't want to take more time as because there are so many important persons. I'm very happy to say a few words before the honorable chair and other distinguished guests. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments and being with us. Now, do we have Deputy Commissioner from Thakurgaon here? No? Or from Bula? Now, there is supposed to be an Upazila Nirbahi officer, Dakup Montu Bishas. Are you here? Probably none of them are here. So may I now?
Sir, Montu Bishas is here. So
is he? Okay. Quickly. Yes. Montu Bishas kothay dekhchi na to.
Sir, he needs to be unmuted.
Hey, unmute kore. Mintu Bishas না এখানে। ঠিক আছে
ম্যাডাম, আপনি কি একটু আনমিউট করবেন?
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, ওটা সমস্যা হলে আমরা আরেকজনকে দেই, তারপরে রেডি হোক। হ্যাঁ
জি।
Do we have here Mr. John Warburton, Team Leader, Extreme Poverty Resilience and Climate Change Team, FCDO?
Sir, he's coming. John is here.
Okay. So we'd like to hear from you for about 5 minutes at the most. Thank you.
I don't think you're expecting John Warburton, sir. I hadn't heard that he's attending. I am due to speak after my colleague Maurizio, but I don't think John is here. Apologies.
Sorry, no apologies. I am here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, apologies, but basically, it is for my director, Miss Judith Herbertson, who's just spoken to.
She will be speaking later. She will be speaking later. There is a name given to me, John Warburton. Are you John?
Yes, I am. But
so if you want to speak, you can speak now.
Well, no, just to say that this has been an extremely interesting discussion. I really don't want to add any points at the moment because I appreciate that we're rather running behind time.
Yes, sure.
So I think better if we just move to my director. Thank you.
Well, but before that, I have two persons to speak a little bit. খুরশিদ আলম আছে নাকি নির্বাহী পরিচালক কোডেক? খুরশিদ আলম? No? Okay. শহীদুজ্জামান?
স্যার খুরশিদ আলম বলছি।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, কুইকলি একটু কিছু বলে ফেলো যতটা।
I want to first of all my chairperson sir and all respected participants from PKSF, my gratitude and thanks that you allowed me to tell few words. I will take only 2 to 3 minutes. As a practitioner in the field for the 35 years in the coastal belt of Bangladesh, I have seen this program has definitely a big dynamics. I have seen the poorest people, those who have lost their dreams, have light in their eyes, and they now believe that this program can change their life. That I have seen in the field level, especially we are working in Patuakhali, Amkhola, Upazila. I visited a few days ago, actually 3 weeks ago, and I talked with many of the target people. I have seen that the main program elements I have seen in the field, that the participation of the people, those who are we selected as a target people, in all steps of the program, they are involved. That is a big shift for after a long time. That is an important part of the program. I also think that I want to mention that in the meantime, we have distributed 26.5 lakhs taka among 885 people. And I thought that they will consume it because this pandemic situation and also their poverty level compel them to eat it up. But I am amazed to see that many of them use it to buy chickens, goats, vegetable seeds, but also I have seen many of them have used this money for treatment purpose. Many of the family members of these selected people are many chronic disease affected, and many money they spend for this for the treatment, and that treatment is also, in my opinion, is not properly done. That I have seen there. I have also seen that the inclusion of disabled people, which is also as in the presentation. I must thank you, Mr. Sharif and Mr. Nuruzzaman, for a beautiful presentation this time also. That the disability is many people are disabled in South. That was also a interesting phenomena, and they are also included. And then the third gender, they also there. But the main thing is that we have to think about a program very soon for these disabled people and for this third gender people. That the pressure from this part of these people is very big to us. This is one of the aspects. And last of all, I just conclude to say that their housing is such a deteriorated condition. If we cannot improve the condition of the houses, then whatever we are discussing about, that their nutrition status, other status is also related with this housing pattern, because so many people are living in a very small house, which is many of the time is underwater. I am not talking about to build the big houses. They can also participate in their own way, but the structure can be changed in a very minimum cost involvement, and which is not free. I am not talking about free money. Maybe no interest rate and a very small money can change the structure of the houses. That's all for the time being. Thank you, sir, for allowing me to speak something.
স্যার, আমাদের ভোলার জেলা প্রশাসক মহোদয় উপস্থিত আছেন, আর বাগেরহাটের বিডিএলজি স্যার উপস্থিত। আপনাকে একটু আনমিউট করতে হবে স্যার। আচ্ছা, থ্যাংক ইউ ফ্রম মাই পার্ট ফ্রম DC Bhola.
Bhola.
I want to start my very brief discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome from my district, one of the very only one island district in Bangladesh, Bhola. From Bhola, I pay my gratitude to all our senior guests and for attending to this valuable and important discussion. First of all, I respected chairperson and honorable chief guest, our senior secretary, finance division, and respected guests and other distinguished. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. And first of all, I would like to give respect to our honorable father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And I, on behalf of my district Bhola, it is our great opportunity to discuss about the pathways of prosperity for extremely poor people, EP, and completion of the inception phase of PPEPP project. We everyone know that our Bangladesh is now the role model for the development. We have the goals of many goals, and it is we have the visions 2041, and we have the SDG 2030. You know that our honorable Prime Minister is working here to develop our country, and we are the associate persons to strengthen our development and strengthen our hands of the Prime Minister, honorable Prime Minister. And we are working here for the development of our Bangladesh and also Bhola. We also appreciate to our PKSF that they are working here very good position. I think they are the development partner of the Bhola. Among the 15 districts, Bhola is the one of the important districts to completion of the inception phase of PPEPP project. I think they are working here, and they already completion the inception phase, but it is result very good, and very I think we are very fortunate that we are the part of the PKSF in the completion of the inception phase of PPEPP. I would like to give our all supports from our district administration to the PKSF and also the development partner. They are working here with great respect and sincerity. We always pay our respect also, and also we are giving support, and it will be always continue to our support to our PKSF partner. It is a great opportunity for us to reduce and eradicate our poverty in the Bhola district. You know that our first goal for the SDG to eradicate poverty, and it is not possible to alone for the government to eradicate poverty. It is also collaboration with the all NGOs. It will be very helpful to us, and from among them PKSF doing the best job here to reduce and eradicate the poverty. I think they will be successful here for to completion their project, and I think it will be very much beneficial to our beneficiaries, and they will be develop they will have to able to develop their livelihood also, and our all support will be with you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I was engaged in the very important discussion with the Rokia Day today, and from my part, if you allow me, it is also, if you allow me, I want to conclude my.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
আমাদের বাগেরহাটের ডিডিএলজি মিস্টার দেবপ্রসাদ পল উনি একটু হ্যান্ড রেজ করেছিলেন স্যার।
কোথাকার?
বাগেরহাটের ডিডিএলজি।
Thank you, sir. Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes. Go ahead, please.
So thank you very much, sir. First, let me express my heartiest felicitation to you and others who have arranged such a very effective and efficacious webinar. And at the very outset, sir, I would like to pay my glowing tribute to our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, because it is the centenary, and we are just celebrating this centenary. And sir, truly speaking, just I would like to express my gratitude.
Can we all present on this webinar?
I would like to express my gratitude to the presenter who have just presented very brilliantly and scholarly, and we have become very much conversant with the functions of PKSF. And sir, truly speaking, Bagherat is a district which is sir, subjected to climate change, and actually, sir, in Bagherat district we have launched a lot of programs from government and non-government organizations. As our Deputy Commissioner is busy with the National Day program, sir, because today is the Rokia Day, and that's why he is involved in this program. And I am DDLG, Deputy Director Local Government, and sir, I am basically involved in just monitoring different various projects going on throughout the district. And we have just we have undertaken a lot of projects, especially sir, logic. Sir, this is the local government initiative on climate change. Then there is LGC. Then there is LGSP3 and many other ADP, many other projects and programs. Sir, as the scholar discussions have already mentioned that, and we have, sir, completed a lot of functions here in our Bagrat district. So far as Marulganj, Mongla, and Sharankhula Upazila of Bagrat district. And these districts are very much vulnerable districts because super cyclone and many other natural disasters affect these upazilas. And we have just undertaken a very, sir, effective and efficacious projects under logic program. And we have just, sir, especially the marginal farmers and the marginal people of this locality, and they are just cultivating especially the salinity resilient paddies and many other vegetables, as you have mentioned, hydroponics and vegetables. So these fodders, especially for the domestic animals. So we are doing these things. And just to address the main challenge in SDG, just to bridge the gap between the affluent and the poor people. So we are trying to bridge this gap very much effectively. And sir, I would like to mention that one thing, that as administration is going on with such activities with both NGOs and GOs, I would like to emphasize on the fact that the overlapping is to be minimized, because there are many other organizations, government and or non-government organizations are doing a lot of functioning, a lot of performing programs. That's why PKSF is to just take care of these things. So there is no overlapping actually, because the government is just disseminating a lot of safety net programs. So this overlapping should be stopped. And we would like to assure you that in Bagrat districts, we will just extend our helping hands to PKSF so that PKSF can materialize their dreams, especially the dreams of just to meet the goals of the SDGs and the 31 instructions of our Prime Minister. So thank you very much for giving me a floor. Thank you very much.
We work closely with the government.
Sir, I am Mohammad Aminul Islam, sir.
Just one second. We work closely with the government, and therefore we avoid overlapping. So let's all work together, because this is a country, one country for all of us, and therefore we should not try and cut one another. And PKSF is a government organization, and it always works within the framework of the government policy and in consultation with the government. And therefore, we avoid all overlaps. If there is any, point it out to us exactly where, not just make a general comment, because I would like a general comment. We don't do that consciously. So if there is an overlap of PKSF activity with any other organization, state or non-state actor, let us know specific, please.
Sir, আমাদের এই যে ফ্যাসিলিটি ওর স্পেশাল গেস্ট জুরিত ওনার একটা প্রোগ্রাম আছে।
আমি দিচ্ছি এখন ওনাদের দিতে চাই, আমি আর কাউকে দিতে চাচ্ছি না। আমি এখন
স্যার, আমি স্যার ঠাকুরগাঁ থেকে স্যার।
আচ্ছা, একটু পরে আমি ওই যে কে চলে যাবেন?
স্যার, আমাদের স্পেশাল গেস্ট জুডিথ হার্বার্টসন আছেন।
ওকে, তাহলে আমরা
হেড অফ কর্পোরেশন ইউরোপ ইউনিয়ন, দুজনেই স্যার একটা প্রোগ্রাম আছে।
Now may I invite Judith Herbertson to speak, please.
Good morning. That's extremely kind of you. I had understood that Maurizio was going to be speaking first. I don't need to go first. Maurizio, what do you prefer, or sir?
Let's use the usual ladies first. So Judith, you can go. Thanks.
You're very gracious. Okay, thank you very much indeed, everybody then. Honourable Chair, Mr. Qazi Kholiquzaman, Chairman, PKSF, other PKSF colleagues, Mohammed Moinuddin Abdullah, AQM Gholam Maula, my EU colleague and gracious friend Maurizio, distinguished guests, good morning and assalamu alaikum. It's an enormous pleasure to be with you for the End of Inception Phase workshop of the Pathways to Prosperity for Extremely Poor People programme, which I will refer to as PPEP. A big thank you to PKSF for organising the event and the fascinating presentation. I want to start with the biggest unforeseen challenge that we've all faced this year, the pandemic, COVID-19. It's already resulted in significantly damaging impacts to the global economy. It's also had far-reaching consequences for most countries' economy, trade, food security, and importantly to this group, poverty. And the evidence suggests that the longer the crisis persists, the higher the risk of a global economic recession, social disruption, and instability. This is the context in which we're all working. We know this, but the challenges are very real. The UN projects that the global economy could shrink by up to 1% in 2020, reversing from the 2.5% expected. Fortunately, Bangladesh has to some extent and so far escaped the worst health impacts of the pandemic, despite the very sad loss of people that many of us know. And at the same time, impressively, Bangladesh's growth is expected to be amongst the highest in the world in 1920. And that's really something to be very, very proud of. The World Bank is forecasting growth of 2% this year, but it then dips to around 1.6% next year and then 3.4% the year after. Now, there are different numbers out there, but I've just used one set of lines. So we know that we're going to be facing challenges. The lockdowns, quarantines, shutting down of markets, disruptions to supply chains and trade has forced poor people out of their jobs, caused a massive urban to rural migration, contrary to what normally happens, and created further pressure on the already scarce livelihoods for the extreme poor that they face in rural areas. And the bank estimates that extreme poverty has probably risen by 15 million. Of course, it's a rounded number and it's not going to be strictly accurate, but this is crucially likely to persist into next year. There is not going to be a magical reversal. And this vulnerability has, of course, been further exacerbated as the poor have had to cope with the prolonged monsoon flooding and the devastating cyclone Amphan. However, if we look at the growth trajectory of Bangladesh, the country has made remarkable economic growth and impressive human development gains over the last decade. This is a story that we're familiar with, so we shouldn't lose track of the enormous resilience of the country and also the entrepreneurial economic energy that usually comes to the fore. We know that annual GDP growth has been over 6% for the past decade. I regularly say at these events that the UK would give its eye teeth to have that kind of record. Poverty halved between 1990 and 2010, and Bangladesh is expected, although we know there are arguments out there, that it will graduate from least developed country status in 2024. And it has high ambitions to become a high-income country by 2041, but this has knocked it. Yet approaching its 50th birthday next year, the country is emerging as perhaps an Asian tiger, a new generation, and thankfully with a very, very strong commitment to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. There are, of course, challenges. So despite the growth and the development, smooth progress even to middle income, upper middle income country status is not guaranteed. And obstacles include the extreme poverty we've been discussing this morning. Importantly, I think the demographic and geographic inequalities, which we are seeing widening and risks the country becoming a successful upper echelon and a left behind lower set of echelons. Undernutrition, which we must not lose sight of because we've got 35% of under fives with stunted growth. That is the next generation, and that's an enormous hit that the country is taking almost behind closed doors. And then finally, the second pandemic, if you like, of climate change and environmental degradation. And if I may just pause on that for a moment, Bangladesh is one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to climate change, with some 10 million people a year already affected. Some countries are talking from the point of view of this is something that will come at us in the future. Bangladesh is living this on a daily basis, particularly, of course, the poor and the most vulnerable, affected by climate change and the more intermediate extreme weather events. It is, of course, showing immensely strong leadership from the Honourable Prime Minister, and I think the country is really lucky to have this role at the head of the Climate Vulnerable Forum and the Prime Minister's early engagement with all of the 5 priorities for COP26. Adaptation and resilience, transition to clean energy, transition to clean transport, the use of nature-based solutions, and access to finance at the scale needed. The UK and Bangladesh are establishing a really strong partnership over this, but we shouldn't ignore that there are millions of people living this reality on a day-to-day basis. So I was so pleased to hear from the District Commissioner who was talking about their work on climate change right here and now. And Bangladesh is responding with its customary zeal and a plethora of excellent plans to these challenges. Vision 2021 provides, 41 provides the roadmap for accelerated growth, lays down broad approaches for the eradication of poverty, inequality, and human deprivation. Whether we can all do this collectively over the time frame set out is a question at the moment. The excellent 8-year 5 plan also includes a much stronger focus on extreme poverty than before, focusing on specific lagging districts, one of the tricky inequalities. And the National Social Security Strategy will help reform the social protection sector. But progress is uneven across the country, and economic growth alone is not enough to tackle poverty and reduce the shocks and stresses and address these inequalities. A growing number of people risk being left behind, and these development gains either eroded or even reversed. This is why PPEC is so important and why it matters to all of us in the room and all the millions of people not in the room. And as part of our collaborative response, PKSF, with, in this instance, FCDO money, is currently implementing a £3 million cash transfer programme for the 34,820 extremely poor households hit across 17 districts. And that was a fantastic response because the pandemic happened, we asked you if you could, you said you could deliver, and it's happening. And right down at the far end, that will be making an enormous difference. What's more, the programme is using digital payments. So that means it transfers the cash quickly to the poor, and we avoid, let's call them fiduciary risks on International Anti-Corruption Day. And I'm not implying anything to do with PKSF there. So I would particularly like to thank PKSF for your efforts in overcoming so many challenges that we faced this last year. COVID-19, floods, the cyclone, and your use of digital platforms for meetings, training and coordination was not only innovative, but it also saved us enormous programme costs and probably saved the environment a little bit as well. A programme of this scale and scope requires great technical direction and programme management to strongly embed this leave no one behind, and your targeting has been a really great achievement on that scale. PKSF's profile and mandate, coming just to the organisation, has also provided the basis for our partnership with government on this programme and offers, we believe, the best prospect for sustainability of our interventions. So in conclusion, we think there's a really strong convergence here between both government policies, PKSF's people-centred development approach, and then the UK aid priorities, and I hope the EU aid priorities too. The programme is well positioned to make a significant contribution to these plans, the 8th 5-year plan, the National Social Security Strategy, and fundamentally the SDGs. So it's a very exciting venture for us all to be involved in, and it could not be more needed than in the current extremely difficult times that we are all traversing. So thank you very much indeed for inviting me. It's been a privilege to be part of this session.
So thank you very much for being with us this morning. Now you will be going because you have another engagement, I understand. So let me thank you
I'm good. I'm
not
here.
only for being with us this morning, but also standing with PKSF to help the extreme poor who are vulnerable not only from climate change, but also from social and economic perspectives. In fact, they are excluded. And also probably they are not able to articulate, probably no, I know that they can't articulate their position, so we have to do that for them. So I'm very thankful to you and to your organization, the government of the UK, for being understanding with us. The way PKSF is human-centric, as you said, and multidimensional, of course. So we stand by the extreme poor as they become poor and then non-poor and then go on to a sustained development process. We stand by them all the way. That's another of our fundamental ways of doing things. And it's also life cycle approach that we follow from the not from cradle to grave, that the phrase you have, but from conception to grave. So we start step behind also. So thank you very much. May I now ask Mr. Maurizio Clown, is it? Of EU?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We met
It's
before, I think. We met before, right?
Yes, we did. It's
Right.
actually Chan, you pronounce it Chan, but no problem. So thank you for giving me the
Chan.
floor, distinguished chair and chairman of the PKSF, Dr. Khalikud Zaman, also managing director of the PKSF, Mr. Abdullah, and I want also to make a reference, even if he had to leave, to the Honorable Chief Guest, Senior Secretary of Finance, Mr. Talukder, and of course to Judith. Esteemed colleagues, dear friends, good afternoon. And thank you for holding this webinar in English, first of all, which allows me to follow actively and with very much of interest. I remember just a year ago, we were meeting to launch this program. At the time, I was just recently arrived to Bangladesh, and I saw the opportunity with John also to go in a field shortly after to get, I think it's very important to get a first-hand understanding of what is the local context and the challenges, and that PKSF and the local NGO partners are working and operating in. I'm very pleased to be here today, among familiar faces, to take note of progress made and looking forward for the next phase of implementation. This partnership with PKSF, FCDO, and the European Union is to build sustainable pathways out of poverty and eradicate inequality is important to us. Poverty reduction was, is, and will be our main objective, European Union main objective when we cooperate with other countries. It contributes to the development, contributes to the national development agenda and to the collective objective, which is that all Bangladesh, as it was already mentioned, should have access to economic opportunities, jobs, and adequate services to lead productive and prosperous lives in safety and dignity. A lot of very interesting and important information was shared today that contribute to shape the program and to ensure the objectives are achieved. I would like to focus and maybe underline two key words and concepts, which is already mentioned also by Judith: sustainability and also scalability. We acknowledge this is an ambitious program that aims at addressing poverty reduction from a multidimensional, multi-sectoral perspective. Pull and push approach seeks to enable households living in extreme poverty or situation of vulnerability to shift from insecure and fragile sources of income to more sustainable ways of earning their living. While the model is very sound and we fully support it, bridging the gap between the theory and the practice will require an interconnected intervention with different purposes, stakeholders, and moving at different speeds. Support to facilitating access to economic opportunity and engagement in markets, as it was mentioned also, it will be critical. But equally important is that these households are connecting to the government services, and I'm happy that actually district commissioner were also following this, because they are on the first line most of the time in providing or coordinating the provision of these services, and resources for long-term impact and shock mitigation especially. This means increased investment and sometimes more attention in the provision of quality and basic services like health, education, and social protection, possibly connected with access to local governance process. And allow me to make an example. I like examples. So an household where a man cannot work because he has a major health problem can surely, I think, be helped technically and also financially in farming, for example, and selling crabs. We visited actually a hatchery for crabs, so very interesting. But again, public health system should provide him with a basic assistance. Education system should take care of their children. And possibly a social protection system should intervene in case whatever shock, crabs cannot be solved, COVID, international market disturbances, transportation, or whatever is the issue, to avoid that the shock actually put the family back to the poverty. So to be successful, changes should happen at household level, and PKSF has a main role, and it's proven an effective also contribution to this, but also at public system level, and where government and all development partners have a major role to play. Traditional graduation models have mostly focused on field implementation, short-term delivery, and activities and services, while often neglecting the requirement for policy reform and capacity development, as well as failing to connect the household to institutional services for a long-term success. Addressing these linkages between the private and the public is the overall ambition of the PPEP program, which aims contribution to the reform for a better functioning public system with greater accountability to citizens for service delivery and a stronger social security system underpinning livelihood intervention, all in line with a recently approved national development agenda and the 8 5-year plan. These aspects are particularly important to ensure sustainability and ownership. We have just completed the Inception Phase, and we want to congratulate with all who have contributed to it. It might sound a bit strange to start already thinking at this stage to the exit strategy, but keeping this vision in mind might be very helpful in identifying the key steps and action to be taken in the coming months and years. Looking forward to the continued collaboration. I thank you all.
Thank you very much for your comments, and I couldn't agree more with you on your last point that you have made, that let's make it a good collaboration, a useful collaboration, not from ourselves, but for the people that we are trying to help get out of poverty and into a sustained process of development. So I thank you very much, and we hope we'll not only this project, but we will be cooperating, at least in terms of if not projects, in terms of thinking together. Now, Aminul Islam, খুব কুইকলি 2-3 মিনিটের মধ্যে একটু বলে ফেলেন, তারপরে আমরা আমাদের
Thank you, sir, for giving me the floor. Sir, I am Mohammad Aminul Islam, Additional Deputy Commissioner Thakurgao. On behalf of the respected Deputy Commissioner, I want to say something. Sir, my respected Deputy Commissioner now is going to attend the National Rokeya Day and another International Women Day for celebrating. Now, welcome you all present on this webinar organized by PKSF for completion of the Inception Phase of PEP project. Here in this webinar, present respected Chair Sir, Secretary Sir, and other respected guests. A special thanks to PKSF for including Thakurgaon in this tribal prosperity distinct list. We know that, sir, Thakurgaon is a district of prosperity and thriving. In this district, there are approximately 50,000 tribal people living here, such as Shantals, Orao, Munda, Rajbangshi, and many more. To develop the living standard of this tribal people, we, the district administration and Upazila administration, and also non-government organizations are working hand in hand under the project named Samotole Bosobasrot Khudro Nirigostir Unnayon, which is run by the Honorable Prime Minister's Office. Sir, ESDO is a pioneer non-government organization in Thakurgaon, eco-social development organization, is working with the help of PKSF in 3 upazilas to upgrade the living standard of the tribal people under the project named Prosperity. And sanitizers and other equipments, medical equipments among the tribes. They also provided monetary assistance too. For the last 1 year, USDO worked to identify households which are ultra poor to offer proper assistance. The district administrations, finally, these district administrations hopes that the mutual assistance of government organization and non-government organization will eradicate poverty and make Thakurgaon a prosperous district. We expect that the 6-year plan prosperity will be implemented well and lead to the eradication of poverty of the tribes of Thakurgaon and surely the targets will be achieved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Now may I request Mr. Arijit Chaudhary, Additional Secretary, Financial Institution Division, Ministry of Finance.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I will not take much time because for the last probably 2 hours, we are listening from all the stakeholders and some important scholars of our country. Our chief guest has delivered his good speech and he provided some thoughts also. At first, I want to convey my gratitude to the organizers who invited me to and me to attend this webinar. I want to convey my gratitude also to the PKSF team for the successful starting and also the continuation of this project. And I want to thank the development partners for their support to initiate this great approach, and ultimately which will be benefited the vulnerable population of our rural areas. I remember the earlier days when we started the initiatives of this great approach, and in fact we focused upon the development of the vulnerable population, in different areas, and also we focused to the innovativeness and also some approaches for the development of the micro entrepreneurship. Importance were also given to innovative ideas which I have mentioned, and also to the technologies. So these will be helpful for the development of the ultimate towards of our country. And with this project, hopefully it will help our help to protect the biodiversity of our country, and some approaches for the development of the entrepreneurs, and also for the quality of the whole management of the implementation team of the these programs. The experience of this program will help us to take more initiative for the development of such type of micro entrepreneurships. I will not take much time, and because for last 2 hours, all our scholars, they have mentioned many important aspects of this program. I want to convey my thanks to the keynote speakers for highlighting some of the key features of the whole approach, and probably the PKSF people and we from FID have taken notes of the comments of the Honorable Chief Guest, and also from the distinguished guests and participants. These will help us to take more initiatives in these directors. And thanks to the PKSF team, project team, for their continuous effort to make the project successful. So with these few words, sir, I want to conclude my speech. Thanks to all.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me make brief comments and then we'll conclude. The first phase, or rather the inception phase, has been completed successfully. Now we are embarking on implementing the project in right earnest. Although we were jolted by COVID-19 and the floods, repeated floods and cyclone, but we rode over those difficulties and making progress. So this is a good beginning, I think, despite difficulties, and we should be able to complete the project in time as we do in PKSF. And also, we are always very seriously monitoring our activities so that we know what is happening on the ground. It's a continuous process of monitoring that PKSF has installed by the partner organizations themselves and by PKSF, so that we know exactly what's happening on the ground. And also we are doing our things very in an accountable manner. And that's one of the hallmarks, I think, of PKSF, that there's accountability established all around. Now, in this project, we are in fact standing by the extreme poor people who are vulnerable from social, economic, and environmental points of view. In fact, they are the excluded, because if you are vulnerable in respect of all these three, you must be excluded. So we are talking about the people who are at the very bottom of the league table. Therefore, efforts needed are much more than otherwise. So we are going to, of course, try our best to target properly and also take into account the resources that they have, so that those can be utilized to the best possible extent, and then additional resources provided so that they can move forward from being extremely poor to poor, and then on and on. Now, PKSF follows one basic principle, and that is, if people are poor or extremely poor, it's because they do not have choices otherwise. Otherwise, they would have moved out of poverty and moved on. So we want to expand choices. That's something we always keep in mind whenever we undertake a program or a project. Are we expanding choices of the people? And in this project, certainly we are doing in relation to producing things, in relation to marketing things, in relation to their health, in relation to nutrition and their children and all of this. So we are expanding choices, but just expanding choices is not enough. You have to enable them to be able to choose the best option possible for them. So in this project also we are doing that. We are enabling the people and we are expanding their choices so that they can make the choice, the right choice for them. We help them in that regard also, and then move forward. So our goal is in this project, as we know, a large number of people who are now constrained in various ways to remove their constraints so that they're free to move forward. And that's what we are trying to do. And hopefully by the end of the project, we will be able to say that we have accomplished the goal that we set. But I have one problem though with projects. You know, you have a project for 3 years, 4 years, or 2 years, or 6 years. After that, what? And we have noticed that after a project is completed, those who implement the projects go away, and the people relapse back, and that's very common. But in PKSF, we have required our administration from the board point of view that you identify the elements which will be needed to be taken care of after the project has been completed, so that we can continue to do things in those respects after the project has been completed, so that people don't relapse back. So in this project also that will happen. In all the other projects that we have, we identify the key elements that we have to be working on after the project is completed, so that the people relapse back into poverty again. And that also comes from the sustainable point of view, sustainable development, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that the UN has accepted and Bangladesh is implementing. So everybody has to be included. So inclusion has to be on equitable basis, on sustainable basis, not just tokenism that you include somebody and then you have included and then you have not included because you leave them alone afterwards. We can't leave them alone here. So we have to be standing by them as long as they need help, as long as they are on the path to a sustained process of development. So that's what PKSF tries to do. That we stand by people wherever, whatever the stage we come to help them, whatever the stage. It may be extreme poverty, it may be poverty, it may be non-poor even, but we stay with them until they become sustained. I'll say they are on a path which is a sustained development process. So that's the way I see this project also. It is creating the basic, it is creating the ground, and I think effectively the way it has been designed, people's capability, health, nutrition, that's extremely important. Unless capability is developed, we can't proceed very far. So it has done that, capability is there. And mobilization is another. Social capital is extremely important among the people and among the institutions, and that's there. So social capital, the capability of people, and the opportunities. I think this is a very well-designed project, partly based on EU and UK's other experiences, but also on the basis of PKSF experiences from other programs. So it has been designed very well, and I hope we'll achieve our goals. So I'd like to conclude. We are a little behind, not very much, 11 minutes. We were supposed to be finishing at 12:40, but it's now 12:53, so 13 minutes overtime. We have done overtime so far, 13 minutes. So thank you very much. And is there anything, Maula?
Sir, আপনি স্যার কনক্লুড করে দেন স্যার।
আমি conclude দেব? So,
Yes.
so let me thank you all who have kindly joined us in this webinar, and our special guest, chief guest, who spoke, but he has left. But the special guests, Mr. Chan is here. Judith Arbason has another thing to do, so she has left. And all the Mr. Orijit Chaudhary are distinguished discussants, the Baki Sattar Mandal, and all the others, and my colleagues in PKSF and the representatives of the district commissioners, which are our partner organizations. So by thanking all of you, let me conclude this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much from PKSF side. Thank you very much. Thank you all other participants, the chief guest and special guest. But one thing, DC Bhagirhat, he was very much interested to tell something. We are sorry for that. DC Bhagirhat, in future we will hear you. Thank you very much.
Was it there? Nobody
Yes,
told
sir.
me. Okay.
Okay, sir. Next time we will hear.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.